Well, hello class, and here we are, end of Unit 7, believe it or not. I really briefly just want to hit on a couple of questions. You had some great questions. In fact, I feel as though you kind of left the best questions for last. And I'm not going to be able to get to all of those questions in this quick video, but I want to get to just a couple of them, okay? So quickly, one of the, I think a great question that was asked was, how should counselors deal with a client that is unable to decide between the career that he desires and the career that he feels pressured into by his family? This is a great question, and a very realistic question, very realistic question that needs to be considered, because it's kind of this. There's some challenges here, right? We're in a business, whether it's in counseling, therapy, or specifically in career counseling, where we're helping people to understand themselves, come to a place of understanding what is it's going to actually be fulfilling, what they want to do, how they're wired, all those different questions. And yet here we are, hearing that there's this expectation from family. A lot of times there's money tied to it, whether it's, you can't get married until you're done with grad school, we're not going to pay for the wedding if you don't finish school. I know people like that. In fact, I have family members that's happened with them. I have had students that have, parents have said, you've got to get this one degree to get this one job. And if you don't do that, then, basically you're, in so many words, somebody may not say this exactly, but some might, you're dead to me, or, you're not fulfilling the expectations that I have for you as a parent. So there's lots of loaded realities with this. It's very complicated. And I think the need for extra sensitivity to these conversations is all the more important for us as we do this work. Right, so there's this balance that we have to have of, am I doing my job? Am I being ethical? Am I being full of integrity, full of character, honest with this? Am I actually helping this client? Because ultimately, if I feel like I'm encouraging them to go against their family, I think that there's some potential ethical questions, especially if there's some expectations, and we're not family. And so, are we driving wedges between family? But I think that we can sometimes coach our clients in ways to have certain sorts of conversations, right? I have a friend who, he told his 4 kids, he said, if you, they're all going to college, he said, you can go anywhere you want, I'll pay for it all, as long as, I'll pay for everything, as long as it falls within this certain amount of money. So, $140,000, something like that. So 4 kids, go anywhere they want, we'll pay for it. You can go to Harvard, you can go to, state school, you can go anywhere you want. I'll pay for it. I'll pay this much if you can get done in 4 years. It's all, you're off scot-free. He says the only exception I have, or the caveat to that, is that you have to minor in Spanish. Okay, study anything you want, but minor in Spanish. Because this is a family that was already fluent in Japanese, conversational, and Chinese. They were American, so they lived actually abroad, so they fluent in English. And then he wanted them to be at least conversational, if not fluent in Spanish. I think that's a great idea. It's a great offer. It's a great requirement in some ways. So go study whatever you want, but you need to do this. I work here at the Claremont Graduate University, and we have a sister school, Claremont McKenna, and a lot of our students at Claremont McKenna will get a degree in economics, and then they'll study what they actually love doing. But the degree in economics is what gets them the jobs, but then they want to study the thing that they love, right? Art, theater, something. I don't know what all the majors. That's not my institution, but then they go this different route. So I think that we can have those discussions, and we can say, hey, I'm really, I want to respect you as parents or family, but I feel, in some ways, maybe it's this direction. Every time I go into those classes, or even if I have that job, I go to that job, and a little piece of me dies. I mean, that's kind of an extreme reality, but I think sometimes people have, maybe you've said that. I've probably said that at some point. So, yeah, there's some deep challenges there. So I think part of it is coaching them, while at the same time being respectful to that family. We don't want to drive wedges, because oftentimes, I've got to think about this. If we're doing a career coaching or counseling interaction with these clients, if we're actually encouraging them to go against the pressures of family, you can imagine what that will then cause for their family, right? So, and I hope that we're not in the business of kind of racketeering and, I'm going to encourage you to go against family so that you can then need to go see a marriage and family therapist, who happens to be my friend or my sweet mate, we share office. That's obviously, I'm speaking in jest with that, but we have to be careful with that. I think we can give them the information, we can give them the resources, we can help them to really dive deep and ask the questions about why is it that you want to go against these family pressures or expectations? What is it that you would really love to do? Maybe they can do whatever job it is that they're being pressured or they feel like they're being pressured to do, but in the specific industry that they're interested in. There's another question about the leisure, all right? So leisure theory and different things that come with that. So actually in vocation, there's the station of leisure, right? It's a vocational station that it's really important that we have leisure. There's a theology of leisure, a theology of rest. We have to do these things. And so sometimes you may not want to do that for your living, right? Whether it's a professional sports player or something like that. But maybe you could be an accountant within that industry. So are there ways that we can help them to kind of rethink? I was listening to a talk on Wednesday, and I think it might have actually been Peter Drucker was being interviewed by Warren Bennis, two management, leadership, business gurus, both of them deceased by now. But I think it was Bennis interviewing Drucker, and I think Bennis asked something on the lines of, what's the number one most important thing for business leaders, for organizational leaders to learn? And Drucker's response was, he said, well, that's simple, Warren. The number one thing they need to learn is they need to unlearn. They need to unlearn how they've done things. And I think that we need to help our folks kind of unlearn how their kind of knee-jerk reaction is to just kind of get frustrated and upset and kind of like lash out. And yet we really need to encourage them to have discussions, but have informed discussions. And I think as we talk about vocation calling and the identity component of work, we can actually help them, I think I say them, our clients, to understand why is it that you don't feel fulfilled here? Why do you want to push back against that? Is it simply because you don't want to do what your family wants you to do? Actually, my wife has a really good friend who had a sibling who went into a certain industry, and that sibling was also always viewed kind of as the more golden child, if you will. And so my wife's friend said, I didn't get into the one desired industry she wanted to for grad school. So my wife was encouraging her, hey, why don't you look at this other industry? And while my wife's friend wouldn't say it, we knew that she was not doing that because she didn't want to be like her sister. Even though she would have been excellent at it, she would have been a shoo-in to certain programs to pursue that career field. She was so stubborn and persistently against doing that she chose another field, which she's actually doing quite well in, but went into incredible amounts of debt. And probably, I don't know if she'll ever be able to pay those off at the amount she's paying per month. But it's just like, why, let's dig into this. Why are you pushing back so much against those family pressures? I think there's always more to the story. And if we can help to kind of peel the layers of the onion back with our clients, maybe they'll come to an understanding and realization that the reason that they don't want to do certain things is not because they don't like the job, but maybe there's something even deeper at play and at hand that needs to be kind of talked through, that they can then either process themselves or take back to their family and talk about those things with them. So that's a great question. It's something that you will absolutely deal with on a, I would say, probably pretty regular basis. Okay. So this is a longer question. I'm just going to read this one and be done with the questions and answers here. But it says, I alluded to this earlier, Liptak proposes the leisure theory of career development, which puts leisure activities and what that says about the individual at the center of career decisions. Personally, I experienced the possibility of making money through leisure activity that I often participate in, even to this day. However, I love how it's worded here. I found it very stressful to rely on a leisure activity as a means for financially sustaining myself. In fact, I momentarily lost the passion for that leisure activity. I did not consult a career counselor, but it seems a similar approach to what would have been the outcome. But it seems a similar approach to what would have been the outcome if I had done so. would individuals who follow the leisure theory of career development be prone to experience a loss of interest in their leisure activity arising from the added responsibilities that comes from making a career out of a leisure activity? Hope you caught that question. Basically, if you partake in a leisure activity as a actually financially sustaining or providing career, what are the chances that you'll lose your passion, much like this student talks about, for that actual activity? That's a great question. It's interesting when you think about professional sports and the amount of money that they're paid for that. When it becomes a job, it kind of becomes a bit challenging because I no longer love the thing that's paying me. It's paying my bills. There's multiple camps and multiple thoughts on this. But Lee Hardy, has a vocation scholar. He teaches at Calvin College out in Grand Rapids, Michigan. He wrote a book called The Fabric of This World. It's a fabulous book written in 1990, never been updated because it simply doesn't need to be updated. And he talks about how oftentimes the thing that we love and the thing that pays the bills don't coincide, right? That's the goal. You have a circle here with a heart and a circle here with a money sign, and you want them to kind of go like this, and yet so often they're very separate things. There's not a lot of crossover there. And if you finally get to a place where there's crossover, we think that's like the penultimate. That's amazing. I finally got it. But it's not always the case, because when you, as was stated here, rely on the thing that you love to do from a leisure standpoint to pay your bills, it no longer becomes a leisure thing, it becomes a bill-paying thing. Sometimes we have jobs to pay the bills so that we can then do the thing that we love to do. And that's very, very common these days. I do think that it's really important that you count the cost of the possibility that taking on a leisurely activity to be a financial means to paying your bills, that the reality is that it could actually kind of beat the passion, beat the excitement, beat the love for that thing out of you, because you no longer have that to do kind of as a release, right? So if you're, let's just say you love playing badminton, okay, and you are part of a badminton club, and every Saturday morning you get together with your friends from the badminton club and you play for hours on end, and you look forward to that every single day of the work week, because you're looking forward to, I don't have to sit behind my desk and do my office work, but I actually get to go play the thing that I love to do. Well, if that all of a sudden becomes something that you actually do for a living, well, then you're not going to want to do that very thing on a Saturday morning. And so you're thinking now you're traveling and you're maybe not at home with family as often. I think of that. I love baseball, and I always dreamt of being a professional baseball player. And even when I coached my kids, it was challenging because I no longer wanted to necessarily, I didn't have the excitement as I could have if I was just a parent on the sidelines watching my kids play soccer and baseball, because now I was actually in it and I was thinking about the strategy and I wanted to win the game and I wanted to score the goals and I got all worked up. But if I was just a parent on the sidelines watching, I think I probably would have had an actually much more enjoyable experience. So to your point, the student that asked this question, is it possible? Absolutely, because you experienced. Is it consistently kind of a consistent happening? I would say probably more often than we realize. I mean, if you were to go poll professional athletes, they might say that they love what they do, but especially, for me, a baseball player, it's 162 games. 81 of them are on the road. So when you think about, they're not typically playing during the day, so they're home in the evenings with family. No, they're playing night games. I mean, and they're playing weekend games, and it takes a toll on you. 162 games, over the course of half a year, man, you're basically on the road for a quarter of the entire year. And even when you're home, you're not really home because you're playing games and you're practicing and all. I mean, it's just a crazy life, and you may have one day off during the week because you're playing 2-3 game series, and it just gets gets crazy, right? And so it makes you so you're not as passionate, it becomes a job, and you're not as excited about that. If you can do that, like if someone just loves to write and you can get a job writing, great. It's not always going to happen, but it could. And again, much like the previous question about family and the pressures that come with that, these are challenging conversations, but they're just that, conversations that need to be had. We need to be informed, we need to be prepared, and we personally need to think, how would I respond to that situation? How would I answer those questions. I know the theories, I know what the literature says, what the research indicates, but how would I personally respond? And if we're prepared, I think we have a much better informed conversation, which can only help our clients. Great questions.